clan house. This is what a traditional clan house would have looked like, except for a couple of things. The first being these benches that you're all sitting on would not have been these safety rails that are going all the way around. And also this door that we actually came in. That is actually, these are required by federal regulation and fire code, and also for your safety and for your convenience and your comfort. Traditionally, there would only be this one door here at the front. It would actually be a little bit smaller than what you see today. And the reason being is this door would actually act for a couple of different reasons. The first being for defense. Oftentimes, the older men, or the men and the older children were off hunting, fishing, and gathering food for the clan. So they'd be off for several days. Okay, so now would leave the women and the children vulnerable to an attack. So if they were ever attacked, what would happen is they could all run into the clan house, they'd grab a log, a rock, anything that they could find, they'd run in here. And so as the enemy warriors would come in, you'd have to enter and bent over speak position as they came through. They'd come in head first. So as they were coming in, anyone could just stand on the side of the door, wait for them. Once they came in, to take that log, whack them upside the head, grab them by their shirt, yank them in, and yell, "Next!" Also, it was used for the purpose of for pot latches. And so whenever a clan would invite another clan, even 2 clans, maybe 3 clans over for a pot latch, as they were entering into the clan house, they'd have what's called an Nakani, or a speaker, who would stand off to the side. He'd have a staff, he'd bang his staff 3 times on the ground to gather everybody's attention. He'd announce who was coming in, what clan he was from, and what position, if he held any position inside of that clan. But as you were to come in, the first thing you would notice is here on the bottom, this entire part would be completely filled with gravel. The reason being is this is where they'd have their fires. There'd be one large fire in the middle that was used for heating and lighting purposes. That'd be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they'd have several smaller fires off to the side for cooking purposes. And so how they let the smoke out is they cut a hole in the roof like you see here to allow the smoke to exit. And for clans that were poor, if they couldn't build a separate building for their smokehouse, what they would do is they'd turn their entire clan house into a smokehouse by hanging the meat from the rafters up there. They'd throw a cedar mat over the top of it, they'd close the door there, and then they'd turn their clan house into a giant smokehouse, smoke a whole bunch of meat at one given time. Also, it was the responsibility of the children to actually replace all the gravel that was on the bottom 2 to 3 times a week. That's because there'd be a lot of ash from all the fires and everything, so they have to haul it all out, take it out, and then gather a whole bunch more and bring it back in. But also, these posts right here that you see here, these are actually what are supporting the majority of the weight of the clan house. It's made entirely from the red cedar, save for these 2 beams across the top. These are actually made from the Sitka spruce tree. They weigh about 2 tons each. So those are being supported right there by those totem poles. And when they built this clan house, they built it in a traditional sense. They didn't use any bolts, screws, or nails. It's all done by pegs. They did use a little bit of heavy machinery to lift these beams up because they didn't want to do it the old-fashioned way, which was they would build an A-frame around the totem poles. They'd throw a bunch of ropes up over the top of this A-frame, tie it onto the end of the pole, and they'd oftentimes have a pot latch and invite a whole bunch of other people over to help them post it up. They post that side, then that side, and then they just repeat it. It's a very difficult process. But also, these posts right here, these were actually originally used to identify what clan was living here. When they built this clan house in the 1920s, they originally intended it, there was a bunch of different clans to work on it, so they didn't want to just dedicate it to one clan, say the Beaver clan or the Halibut clan, because these would have been entirely Halibuts or Beavers, or it was Bear clans, which would be bears to identify what or who owned the clan house. And so these ones actually tell a story of a man named Blackskin. And how the story goes is, at about the age of 12 or 13, Blackskin and his brothers were sent off to live with their uncle. Blackskin was the youngest one of his family, and the reason why his parents did this was they found that children were more likely to learn from a relative than they were from their parents. I don't know how many people here have had kids. Oftentimes your kids don't listen to you, but you send them over to their uncle, or you send them out with, like, say, a grandparent, a family friend, relative. They come back and they'll say, oh yeah, you did great, well behaved man. Well, they found this out, so this is what they would do, send them off. So to learn their ways, they would be more respectful, and they'd learn it better. Well, while Blackskin and his brothers were living with their uncle was actually killed by a sea lion. And you can actually see it here on each of the posts. Notice he was actually hit by the tail. The sea lion, and by doing that, ended up killing Blackskin's uncle. Well, Blackskin and his brothers, they swore vengeance. They said that they would avenge the death of their uncle by killing this seal. And so they started training every single day. They were lifting heavy rocks. They were lifting boulders. They'd go out in the water. They'd sit in icy cold water for hours. And they'd come up and they'd lay by the fire and warm up. And they kept doing this until finally one day they felt like they were ready they were strong enough and ready to kill the sea lion that killed their uncle. Well, when his brothers were about ready to leave, they said Blackskin couldn't go. They thought he was the runt of the bunch, that he wouldn't be able to do anything. Well, he begged and pleaded to go. Oh, and they agreed to let him go under the condition that he'd only sit there and watch and guard the canoe. And so he agreed to it, and they went out to this island where they knew the sea lion was. Blackskin's brothers, they jumped out of the canoe, they ran up to the hill to fight the sea lion. Well, the sea lion was so mighty, he ended up hitting his brothers, knocking them out, and was about ready to kill his brothers when Blackskin, he loved his brothers very much, he jumped up out of the canoe, grabbed his spear, he ran up, started fighting the sea lion, trying to kill it. The sea lion ended up breaking his spear. He didn't know what he was going to do, so he ended up grabbing it by the tail, as you can see here, in the totem pole. He ended up tearing it in half with his bare hands. Oh. He ended up helping his brothers up and sought to their needs. When they came to and they saw what he had done, they realized that he wasn't the runt, that he was a great warrior. And when they returned back to their clan actually made Blackskin the chief. And you can see that by the weasel hat on top of his head. The other thing is with these clans, anywhere from 30 to 50 people would be living in here at one time. About as many people that we have here right now are living in here. And so it would be pretty crowded with all your belongings, all your possessions. And so what they actually did is, if you notice, you might have noticed as you're walking in, these boards kind of loose. They actually did that for a purpose. And so the natives, they didn't have walk-in closets, they had walk-on closets. And so each of these boards are designed to be pulled up, and so a person can store their belongings underneath. And so they'd take the tallest member within the clan and lay him down on the floor. They'd measure how many boards he took up, and that's how much space was allotted to every single person inside the clan house. Also with these clans were actually matriarchal society, meaning that the women were in charge. Yet, yes, men were the chiefs of the clans, but the women would make all the decisions. And how you'd actually know which clan you came from your mother. Because everybody was either a raven or an eagle. That was just something they had one of the other laws that the clans all had that they agreed upon is that an eagle can never marry another eagle. An eagle has to marry a raven, and a raven has to marry an eagle. And so you would get which one you were from your mother. So if your mother was an eagle, you were an eagle, and then there's also your sub-clan, which they just mostly refer to clans, so that'd be the seal, the killer whale, the bear clan. The bear clan that you'd also be part of. And so it was a very easy way also to track your genealogy, where your clan came from. So let's say you were eagle bear, your mother was an eagle bear, your father would have had to have been a raven, his mother would have been a raven, and his father would have been an eagle. So you could just go back, trace all the way where your clan came from by just knowing that information. And also, whenever they completed a clan house, what they would do is the oldest matriarch within the clan, she would come in, she would walk in, she would inspect the clan house, she'd lift up the boards, she would look at it and see that if it was fit for her clan to live in. She would then take her hand, she'd dip it in black paint, and then she'd put a mark on the back of each of these posts. And as when we exit the clan house, if you look back here, you can actually see where they would actually do that. But are there any questions about the clan house here, folks?